Welcome to the Mike Mazie Podcast, CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former state senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. Mike talks with public policy and industry leaders about needed transformative changes to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for people to live, work, and retire.
We have a fascinating yet somewhat disturbing topic to focus on today: foreign ownership of land, which we hear about from all over the state as we ask residents of Oklahoma, what are you most concerned and frustrated about? And as everyone knows, we've got communist Chinese and Russians and cartels that have bought up land all across the state of Oklahoma for these huge marijuana grow farms. And along with that comes an increase in drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking. It's really become a public safety crisis. But we're lucky today because we have a law enforcement expert with us. We're really pleased that our new friend, Sheriff Keith Frutiger from Woodward County, is going to give us some important perspective on this issue. And I know, Sheriff, that you're kind of new to this job in Woodward County, but you've got a long, impressive career in law enforcement and public safety. So could you please share with our friends out there some highlights about your career?
Sure. Yeah. So I started my law enforcement career at the Oklahoma State University Police Department back in 1991. And I worked there as a student officer and a dispatcher until 1994. And then in 94, I went to work for the Edmond Police Department. And I was a sworn police officer for Edmond and as a field training officer. And then I worked for Edmond for 7 years. And then in 2001, I went to work for the FBI as a special agent. And so I worked for the FBI as a special agent from 2001 until I retired at the end of the year in 2022. And in that capacity as an FBI special agent, I mainly worked on public corruption cases, white-collar crime cases, drug cases. And then toward the end of my career, I did a little bit of supervision on a national security squad. And so that was what gave me my first exposure to some of the national security threats that we face today.
Okay.
And then, as you said, after I retired from the Bureau, I started this job as the sheriff in Woodward County on July 1st. So you're right. I am new to this.
Well, sounds like they're lucky to have you out there in Woodward County. And we so appreciate your service to the people of Oklahoma. Now, as we all know, these marijuana grow farms are all over the state. What have you seen? What are people seeing or experiencing or worrying about in Woodward County?
So, like some of the stuff that I've personally seen since I've been here is if we go on some kind of a call where there's a grow farm, like for example, on a recent one, I went with a deputy and we encountered a Chinese man who was running the farm, and the only identification that he could provide to us was a New York State ID, right? And so there's a couple things I think are noteworthy about that. One is that some of these blue states tend to give...
Just hand them out.
Right. They hand out IDs. We don't really know who those people are, but they try to legitimize them by giving them an ID. Now, I know that state law requires, if you establish residence in Oklahoma, which this guy clearly had, he had 30 days to establish his residence and get an Oklahoma ID, which he did not. And the reason he did not is because he probably did not have
The right
the
documentation.
proper documentation
Right.
to satisfy the Oklahoma authorities and get an ID here.
So more than likely, he's a illegal non-resident.
That's right. And then, so when we look at this mess of foreign ownership, I mean, one of the big things that we face is the fact that the land purchases are oftentimes obscured either through like a straw purchaser or through like ghost partnerships, right? So you can have an LLC where you have a member of the LLC that can sign your paperwork and do whatever. That's a U.S. person or has satisfied the residency requirements to have a business here. But in reality, the real people owning and running the business are illegal, and they are, in this case, what we're talking about, Chinese.
But those people they're connected to would obviously be culpable, right?
Yes, I mean, the way I look at it, yes, they would be.
And
Because they probably don't know anything about the business. They're just simply a straw purchaser, and it's, I think it's akin to like a felon giving $500 to his girlfriend and sending her in a gun shop and saying, "Here, buy a gun for me."
yeah.
You know,
So here's one thing that's difficult to understand. You were extremely helpful to me on this issue, and helped me become more aware that the Chinese Communist Party probably owns land in all 77 counties of
Yes.
Oklahoma. And,
Yes.
It's a very lucrative operation, lots of cash, lots of other nefarious activity. But we do have 5 major military installations in the
yes.
state of Oklahoma. And so from CCP-controlled land, you could easily have weapons strikes against these installations of ours, just like Israel recently did to Iran with all these drones in a sneak attack. And I just can't figure out why nobody seems to be raising the alarm that this is now a national security issue and a clear and present danger. Can you explain that?
Mike, that is the question of the day. Like, I cannot figure out why this isn't the main topic on every news channel in the country. This should be a bipartisan top priority for policymakers. But for some reason, it's not. And I can assure you the Chinese Communist Party is not interested in an economic opportunity to come into Oklahoma and sell some weed.
Okay.
I promise you, that's not the end goal. Right, all we have to do is look at how much land around military installations have they purchased. What does that mean for us, right? So you mentioned, I know we talked in a previous conversation about the Israel and Iran war. I mean, Israel was able to surreptitiously build these drone facilities inside of Iran and take out their air defenses from behind to pave the way for their Air Force to come in and really make Iran look like a paper tiger, right? Why are people asking questions? Do we think the Chinese didn't see the same thing we saw, or that they hadn't already thought of this? Like, these are the things that concern me about the lackadaisical approach to foreign ownership of our land.
So, wouldn't the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation be able to dig into and request help possibly from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who, literally are the funders of the land purchases next to these, important military installations of ours? I know there's smart people in law enforcement. Wouldn't they be able to figure that out if there was some direction and leadership from the top, Sheriff?
Yeah, and to me, it should fall squarely on the Bureau, right? I think the Bureau should be the number one agency involved right now in looking at these foreign ownerships of land near military installations. I believe there is a counterintelligence threat that needs to be addressed.
Well, as I dove into this more this past year, I did find that in the Oklahoma Constitution, Article 22, there is a provision that forbids the foreign ownership of land. So it's already legal in Oklahoma, but the current Attorney General of Oklahoma, who does like to say more often than not, he's the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Oklahoma, refuses to enforce the law for some reason. And then the legislature passed this bizarre bill in 2023 called SB 212.
212, yep.
That I believe, from what I've learned from some friends, at the Capitol, started out as a way to really bring some statutory teeth to what's in our Constitution. But the big money interests all of a sudden, got a hold of it, and the next thing you know, the former Speaker of the House is, green-lighted this legislation, which literally has this crazy loophole in it that allows somebody to check a box on these newly required affidavits that say, I'm not a citizen of the United States and not a legal resident, but I do plan on becoming one. And, have the sheriffs been made aware of this in, all 77 counties? Because I know the county clerks are aware of it, because that's where I, uncovered this situation. And, why don't you think our law is being enforced?
I don't even know if I could speculate on why that is. I do know that on SB 212, it just seems a little silly to me that you can go into a land purchase deal and literally just declare and say, yes, I'm lawfully entitled to purchase this land, and then buy it. But without any kind of a veracity check, we're not.
We're supposed to trust
I
the
don't
honesty
know that
of the
anybody's taking
cartels.
these I don't know that anybody's taking these affidavits and saying, okay, let's look into this person and let's make sure that they're actually.
I'm told by the county clerks they're not.
And then so it circles us back around to the conversation that we had about straw purchasers, right, and ghost partnerships. So what good does the SB 212 affidavit actually do if you have a straw purchaser or a ghost partnership? Because then if you look at them and they go, yeah, they're entitled to buy land. Now, to be fair, I guess you could look into the future and say, well, if there ever was an incident that drew law enforcement attention to a particular grow operation, and we dug into the ownership records and we found a fraudulently signed, affidavit where they're defrauding the state, essentially. Now, I guess we could take some enforcement action then, but that's on the back end, right? Well, who knows how much has happened between the time they signed the deed and the time that law enforcement got turned on to them.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing in some other states is they're being, proactive on the front end, if you will. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders over in Arkansas, literally forced one of these, shell entities to divest themselves of all Chinese communist ownership or get kicked, completely out of the state. And,
right.
Our President Trump has kind of shown us we didn't need new laws, unlike some of the, media false news to solve the illegal immigration problem. Within a week or two, they were empowering the Customs Border Patrol to do their work, and within a couple weeks, all this flow into the country has stopped. So our contention is we can enforce the law, we can close the crazy loophole, and we can start kicking some of these unlawful residents, Chinese communists, out of the state of Oklahoma. These examples that we're seeing in Arkansas and Missouri, I believe the Attorney General in Missouri has taken a proactive approach from some of our research. is it possible for our OSBI to learn from what's happening in other states so we can get aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The U.S. Constitution, right, guarantees we have the Commerce Clause, right, in Article 1, and it gives the government the
Interstate commerce.
the authority to regulate commerce, right? And so subsequent Supreme Court rulings regarding that matter have affirmed that we can regulate commerce. It has to be reasonable. So I think that we could take a reasonable approach to regulation, especially when it comes to these marijuana grows and to foreign ownership of land. For example, we do it already with firearms, right?
Okay.
The Second Amendment guarantees us the right to keep and bear arms, but not all arms. There are some reasonable regulations that go along with that, right?
Right.
With alcohol, we see the same thing. And so I really think that, and I know we have like the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority and stuff, and I can't really speak. I don't know enough about what they do. I can't really speak on that, but I would like to see some more regulation, whether that's in, increasing the amount of that it takes to get into the business, whether that's, I think a big one would be limiting the size of the grow operation. I mentioned the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Association. They put out some statistics a while back, and I was really kind of shocked by it. I'll find it right here real quick.
Okay.
Oklahoma produced 32 times more marijuana than was needed to satisfy the needs of licensed medical marijuana patients.
32 times.
So think about
it
that
all
for a
over
minute.
the country.
Right. And so if we have 32 times more than what our patients in Oklahoma need for medical marijuana, to me, that just opens the door to black market. I doubt these growers are just going to say, well, we produce too much, we're going to destroy it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money there. So it just opens the door to other things. And so, with that regulation, improved regulation, we can really pump more money into like the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, who can really start. They're doing a great job right now. I work with them all the time.
Okay.
They're doing a great job right now. But man, with more money involved with them to regulate this better, I think it'd be a win for all of us.
Speaking of regulation, I read a law enforcement professional suggesting, some of which you briefly mentioned, that we should raise the annual registration cost for a license to grow marijuana to something similar to what California is doing, which is somewhere around $90,000 to $100,000, per year. And then if by regulatory or executive orders you restrict the land size on which a grow farm can operate to something smaller than, I guess, what's basically unlimited now to whatever these nefarious entities own, then you would shrink down the production level to be enough for the folks who legitimately want access to medical marijuana. And the people of Oklahoma, did vote for that. And so they want access to medical marijuana, but higher costs for the license and land restriction for the grows could conceivably dry up the demand and the supply, and then maybe the Chinese would just leave because it's not so easy and cost effective and lucrative to grow all that marijuana here. What is your take on being, kind of tough on?
Well, I agree.
That level.
So if we're going to legitimize marijuana for medical purposes, then we should also, at least in my opinion, increase the penalties for violations of these laws. If we're going to enforce and regulate these laws, then let's increase the penalties for those who knowingly and willfully violate them. So whether that's in the production aspect, packaging, or distribution, any of that.
Well, that just seems like common sense, and we feel like with some Trump-like tenacity, we can get after this issue with some leadership that takes the public safety crisis and the national security crisis seriously. So we really, really appreciate your transparency and thoughts on this issue, Sheriff, and when we get the chance to take aggressive action, we're really going to be counting on you for advice and input. And for today's purposes, we want to again thank you for spending some time with us, and thank you very, very much for your service to the people of Oklahoma and helping to keep us safe.
Welcome to the Mike Mazie Podcast, CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former state senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. Mike talks with public policy and industry leaders about needed transformative changes to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for people to live, work, and retire.